In the Every Acre Counts program, a working lands approach is used to address problems. The practices used vary depending on a producer's situation.
So you've kind of answered my next question with how you maybe manage those marginal lands. Is there anything else that you would do on some of these areas?
I like to integrate livestock into the rotation there too, having that footprints going across there and the biology that livestock can add to. And that's using the diverse crops that are growing on there. Cattle can utilize them using cover crops or just a variety of crops to make them productive.
Have you investigated any special types of cover crops or other species of crops to plant on those marginal lands, or are you just kind of seeing what grows?
Kind of seeing what grows, but I think grass-based crops and stuff seem to do a little better in some of those marginal ones, and there's always figuring out which plants are more adaptive to them challenging soils.
So I want to just switch gears a little bit, because I think Every Acre Counts is related to everything on the farm, and I know you're a big advocate of soil health, and you've been using those practices on your farm for many years. So is soil health important for the soils of these marginal lands?
Yes, because I think you know we got to improve them. They got to provide a return, and working in that diversification and just looking at getting away from maybe traditional crops for those areas that can make them productive and get them back into a productive level. So,
you know, we talked about managing these marginal lands and using different approaches and so forth. So, are perennials, do you think a perennial sequence of plant species are important for improving soil health on those marginal lands?
Yeah, I think that's a good route to take, is to put it in for a certain amount of time, maybe 5 to 10 years, and get those perennials in there, let them develop the soil, improve the soil. With having a living root in the soil in them spots will really bring it along and change it and make it productive again.
Sure, help move those salts back down as well.
Yep.
So, you know, on these marginal lands, we saw some wonderful examples of native prairie restoration, and in the process of, and a great pollinator plot and all of that. Just want you to discuss a little bit the impact those perennials have had on these marginal lands.
Well, it's amazing how fast they restore them, like the salinity areas where, I mean, they pretty much went down to zero production. It's just, you could just see it. They're just saline covered white that grows nothing, and in 3 or 4 years, the prairie has restored it. And but as soon, you know, I mean, if you just go back to doing what you did before, it's coming back. It might take a few years. So, you know, I mean, it's just probably best to leave those really bad areas in there. Maybe some that are less marginal, you could farm in a different way. But, you know, the recuperation is quicker than you'd think it would be.
That saline thing was absolutely mind-boggling because it was so bad. I mean, I literally couldn't believe anything would grow there. And to see the change in that short a time is amazing, and I don't think very few people probably realize that. I know I didn't. Just how fast you can change that saline area into productive soil again.
It's amazing restoration,
isn't it? It's just mind-boggling.
So once you've done that, what type of conservation practice have you used on these marginal lands?
In the past, for marginal lands, our toolbox was fairly limited. I mean, we would use manure in those areas way back many years ago when I started farming. And with the livestock operation we had, we really didn't generate enough waste to properly handle a lot of the air. We were using it across entire fields, so the marginal lands received that, but not to the degree they should have. After that, we started rotating more into alfalfa and different forages and stuff in those marginal areas. As that seed improved with salt-tolerant alfalfas and other things, we saw kind of mixed results. And then fast forward to present day, I would say with the the types of grass mixtures that we have access to now, and the way that they can be tailored to that marginal setting, it's really upped our game to be able to put the right mix at the right spot.
Long enough, have these stands of grass been in place, improving the soil long enough for you to measure that, quantify that at this time? You know it's doing better, but have you been able to put hard numbers to those improvements yet?
Yeah. With the new seedings that we started with in 2020, and agronomists might differ with this, or a soil scientist, I don't think we've got enough of a database to really quantify what the net result of that would be. We know it's beneficial. We know we can utilize the output from that piece of land down the road, but in terms of really stacking on soil health benefit and water filtration, all those things, the benefit is there. I would say probably a little too early in the process. And again, I'd have to seek some outside help to determine when would be the best time to measure that.
So would it be fair to say that it's getting better, but it's maybe not fully healed if it was bad, or
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely.
Just
Getting
a feel for that.
That soil has got to be improving to not have the water run off, to not have saline buildup, and also too, I mean, the grass that's out there, to me, looks like it's very well suited to give that plant the most potential in a pretty rough area. So that, I mean, we're checking a lot of boxes, that right crop in the right area, and hopefully we're managing that properly.
Could you talk about your marginal land issue that you have on your farm?
Yeah. So it as we talked about before, our landscape here is very flat. If we get a lot of rain, we have a lot of ponding, and if we're not using the water efficiently in those areas, after the water evaporates, we're left with salt. And over years and years of wet conditions, they've just expanded. And we're on the acres that need that help and need that cover to get things going there again. That's where we've taken more of an aggressive approach with the Soil Health and Habitat Program and Every Acre Counts to really dial in what acres need that help. We kind of knew, but it's helped refine what acres need that approach. And seeing, in last fall we planted that grass and alfalfa mix, and it makes a guy smile this year when you see it green and there's no exposed soil sitting there because we haven't had to spray it or anything. It's covered and the soil's actually alive again. Not fixed by any means, but the process is starting when you can see something growing there and water's not just pounding on it and just sitting there. We're using it. So, roots are going down and things are happening that we can't see, but we know are happening. And that really drives home the point of why it's important to do it and starting to recoup some of these acres, because they don't have to be lost. They just need a different management approach. And our hope, I guess, is within that program that, it's a 5-year grass program, that year 6 we'll hopefully have a cropping system that we're ready to roll into those acres to help keep them at bay and continue to improve them. Or maybe the grass stand that's there is more profitable with a job of being in hay production versus crop production. So it's just giving an acre a different job than just trying to have a blanket approach across the whole farm.
That was a saying out of the crop clinic last summer, was that some of your acres need to be fired from what they're doing now and find a different job. And that really helps you see it. It's like, yeah, they're not going to cut it as corn or soybean acres. We got to fire them from that and raise something else that's going to work there. We've got a producer we work with. We put alfalfa in a few years ago around the bin site, and that's just taken over every little salt spot out there, and we're getting good income out of it. It's working good for him. We've got quite a few guys that are interested in this hay program through SHHP once we're to the point we can do that. And yeah, we're seeing areas out here on this home section that hasn't raised anything in years, and that grass has taken over it. You can't even find those spots now. And so we're really excited that we made, a year ago we were pretty nervous. I was nervous, shall we say. But this year, my excitement level is probably higher than it's been in a long time in farming, just because I know we're doing things right, we're doing things different, and it's just fun to see how it's kind of coming together.
With the advent of some of those problem areas and things, and the diversity that you're using on your farm, do you think, or what would your comments be about agriculture's ability to fix or improve the environment? Do you think farmers hold those keys to do that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I had some areas that weren't problem areas and then became problem areas, and then by just changing practices, I've been able to kind of start the process of repairing those back again. So, I mean, I definitely think, you know, just with a different mindset or just a few different tweaks to your, you know, current practices, it's definitely possible.
And that's come through the ability to adapt with different crops and different forages and different management scenarios.
Yeah, because, well, like the different zones you have in the field, you know, once you got into using the precision side on that, you start really being able to pinpoint those areas that aren't producing, and what, you know, you can focus on what that area is better suited for, and kind of go from there, make small changes. And
the only other thing would be, and you touched on a little bit, with where you're at with the precision technology, are you able to reallocate any of your inputs, like put more fertilizer on better ground now? Have you done anything like that?
Yeah, on with all the zones mapping and precision spreading, a lot of my acres, well, all my acres that I do fertilize, you know, since these marginal areas weren't making me any money, so why throw inputs where it wasn't, you know, traditional and the high fertilizer prices? If I focus those dollars and the fertilizer on the better, more productive ground, that's where I was able to get the same bushels off of less acres. So sure, making those acres count more for me, I guess. And
that's gonna eventually improve your APH yield.
Yeah, that's definitely a benefit. So then the years, if, you know, we're wet, dry, you know, we got a lot of, you know, prevent plant areas, and there's times when improving your APH over the years helps in those type of scenarios. And, you know, by taking out a lot of those marginal areas anyway, your APH goes higher, and you don't have the prevent plant because you're using a lot of those areas for some other purpose, and so then you're not, you know, wasting as much time on those areas, I guess.
So, just to kind of follow up here just a little bit, or maybe get your opinion on this. Was there a time, or maybe it's still that way, where your neighbors or the other farmers you talk to think there's a quick fix for these salty areas, or there's something else wrong with them, and if they fix that, they can improve that salty area? What have you heard?
I've heard, you know, I guess I've heard a lot of different scenarios on what some do think. They're just, you can just spray something on it and it'll help, and then, or, you know, the plant a cover crop just quickly get rid of it, you know, where you're still working it up, and you're, especially in those areas where the soil's a lot tighter, you know, it doesn't do enough to open up the pores by reworking it right away, or always just killing it off. I mean, sometimes you gotta have a scab grow a little bit with some, you know, some weeds if before they go to seed. I mean, it's not an issue. It's not really a weed, I guess, if it's serving a purpose, where sometimes you need that something growing there, whatever it is. Even sometimes, you know, kochia. Honestly, cows eat kochia at times too. At the right stage, they'll, you know, do it. There's a lot of things that you could kind of maintain something growing in those areas.
So kind of the theme for the day is using every acre to its fullest potential, and you've obviously demonstrated that. So what would be your message to other producers that are thinking about something different or haven't done what you've done? What would be your advice?
Well, you need to challenge the norm. You need to question things that you've done, and maybe challenge your thinking and change your thinking. Because if you don't change your thinking, you're not apt to do it. Right. So that's the first thing. You have to change your attitude. And maybe you don't do everything for the dollar. Maybe you do it for the most benefit. Well, I call it the most economic benefit. It's not really the highest dollar enterprise, but it's the most economical, sure, rational. I don't know if it's rational, but very, it's just common sense.
So talk about how you've learned to adapt to the marginal land that you have, the salty soils, the wet soils.
I got used to trying new things with working with Jim Miller, Precision Soil, and in the process I start seeing small differences. I take pictures. Probably the biggest thing for me is having the cell phone in my pocket, and I'll see something and it'll make me say, what's going on there? Or I'd like to show this to somebody else when I'm visiting with them. And yeah, I might be one of those guys. I'll pull out my phone and start showing people pictures that they don't want to see because, oh crap, now I'm gonna be there forever.
So you've used perennial plants and annual plants, cereal rye, Japanese millet. Can you talk about the importance of using those plants and battling with these salty, wet soils?
Diversity is what I've learned is the key. I got tired of just planting corn and soybeans and watching areas grow nothing. And back in 2016, we started planting the Hamilton blend. Actually started maybe a couple of years earlier. And I liked what I saw. I would take pictures of that, show it to Jim and other people, and it brought me joy. I'm a guy that likes to see stuff grow, and once I started a little bit of that, then I wanted more. And so then you start asking more questions. What if this? What if that? Maybe I could try this. There was one year I planted forage sorghum third week of July, and my neighbor asked me, what are you doing with that? I says, I won't know till I plant it and see how tall it grows.
So you're adapting to your environment, you're adapting to your own farming system and your needs. And would you describe that as just doing the next best thing?
Oh, definitely. Between my brother and my land, we have 400 acres of marginal or extremely salty ground. And I got to thinking, if I can find something that'll grow on that, I can produce forage. Now all of a sudden I have 400 acres that I can harvest for grain instead of silaging, or I have 400 acres that I can plant to a different crop that I can sell for cash. And I do enjoy hunting pheasants. My wife and my family do. I do enjoy the memories that makes. And if I can grow something and enjoy that for the fall season, that's worth more than the money I'm going to make on a prevent plant check.
It didn't always look like this. We're standing in it's a saline reclamation area on Jeff and Scott Hamilton's operation, and in 2018, they made the decision to try and recover these acres, and they did it with what you're seeing here today, with the saline tolerant perennial mix. So it's got some hybrid wheatgrass in there and some salt tolerant alfalfa. These acres were really not productive for row crop production. Over the years, the salts had moved towards to the surface with our higher rainfall events, and just crop rotation wasn't really using enough water, to be honest. And They had EC values that were really quite high, in the mid to upper 20s, which is a lot of times if you're driving around this part of the state, especially the James River Valley, you'll see those white surface areas and crop fields, and that's really what this area used to look like. So you're seeing year 4 of establishment. In 2018 it was planted, and here in 2022 you can see it looks pretty good. You'll still see some patches of foxtail and some kochia, but really those areas are getting smaller and smaller as the species we want to see start to move into those areas, and the salt levels drop down.
What in particular was planted here? So, for perspective.
Yep. So historically, this was a corn-soybean rotation. The Hamiltons are for the most part no-tillers even. But what this was seeded to in 2018 was AC Saltlander, which is a hybrid green wheatgrass, and it's got really good salt tolerance for germination and growth. And that's most of what you see heading out here as you look across the landscape. And there was western wheatgrass, which is South Dakota state grass, and it's a native grass. It's a cool season also, and it's just really adaptable grass that can grow in higher salt areas. It can take some flooding. It's got the good tolerance in that respect, and some drought tolerance, so it's just kind of a good overall grass to throw in these mixes. And then you'll see the alfalfa we have out here. I believe it's Salinity Max alfalfa is what it's trademarked as. There are other species of alfalfa that you can get some good saline tolerance, but that's the species we used here. So the salinity levels have dropped drastically, so we're nowhere near those mid-20s we were the first year. And we're down, for the most part, where you see a really healthy stand of grass, we're below an EC of 4, which is what we consider to be saline soils. And so you'll have other small areas where you see foxtail and kochia still growing. That's where you've got the EC levels that are probably in the between 4 and 10 still, but those have dropped down quite a bit. And so for the most part, we don't have a salinity problem as far as EC reading would tell you, but we still have these little small patches that we haven't quite recovered yet. And it's really not till you get those salts drugged back down in the profile with these perennial plants that you can maybe look at changing the land use out here back again to row crop.
Could the practices and techniques used here be used in other areas in the multi-county region here?
Yes, they certainly can. This translates all across the state. In my opinion, probably the Great Plains too, up in North Dakota where they have saline issues also. So these species could be used anywhere in South Dakota. There are other species that are salt tolerant and you could use for these saline recovery sites also. That's really a producer needs to decide what they want to use the site for while it's recovering. If it's to be hayed, then the species here would work great. They're very palatable, they're easy to hay, they have good regrowth after the cutting. If your goal is to just kind of leave it as set-aside acres for wildlife or hunting, for example, you might want to look at species that have a little more, put a little more height on them, but maybe aren't as palatable to livestock. And there's some tame species that we include. Tall wheatgrass is one that's got really good, tolerates saline soils really well, but isn't necessarily palatable for livestock at a lot of stages. If you're looking to graze it, you could use a mix similar to this, or you could diversify with a few more native species that are tolerant of saline soils. Western wheatgrass, which we have in here, is a great example. But really, before you decide your species, you really need to decide what you're going to use these acres for while you're restoring or getting rid of those salts.